Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the first University of Chicago Leaders in Philanthropy event of 2022. UChicago Sustainability, Past, Present, and Future. My name is Keelan Schneider, Senior Associate Director of Donor Relations, and I am delighted to welcome all Maroon Loyalty, Chicago, Harper, Odyssey Scholarship, and Phoenix Society members, as well as their guests to tonight's virtual program. Your investment in the University of Chicago continues to amaze me, particularly during these challenging times. This evening, I'm so excited to introduce a program focusing on sustainability, which is always certainly top of mind for me, as I know is the same for many of you and those in the greater UChicago community. Tonight, we will hear from 3 university experts in the field of sustainability. Sara Popenhagen is the Sustainability Manager at the university. Sara joined the University of Chicago in 2014. In her role, she is responsible in assisting the management of university sustainability goals and associate projects, development and implementation of projects related to natural resource conservation and energy efficiency, leadership in energy and environmental design and sustainable buildings, waste diversion, and partnerships with students, staff, and faculty. Sara will provide us with an overview of UChicago's sustainability plan and timeline, including the university's goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Liz Moyer is an associate professor of atmospheric science in the Department of Geophysical Sciences. She is the principal investigator for the Center of Robust Decision-Making on Climate and Energy Policy, or RDCEP, the Data Science and Energy and Environmental Research Program, and the co-lead for the Environmental Frontiers Initiative. Professor Moyer will provide information on how our interdisciplinary scientists help us understand future climate impacts, evaluate policies, and make robust decisions based on outcomes. Sabina Sheck is a Senior Associate Instructional Professor in Environmental and Urban Studies in the College and Division of the Social Sciences, and the Faculty Director of the Program on Global Environment and Chicago Studies. Professor Sheck will present on student engagement and sustainability at the university. Thank you all again for being here tonight. And now, to begin the program, I invite Sara to the virtual floor.
Thank you so much, Keelan, for that lovely introduction. I'm Sara Popenhagen, and I'm completely thrilled to be here this evening to speak to you about sustainability at the University of Chicago. So thanks for having me, and thank you for attending. Just to give you an idea of the structure of the Office of Sustainability at the university, we sit within Facility Services, and we fall within the Campus Planning and Sustainability Unit, led by Alicia Berg, Assistant Vice President. So a little bit about the timeline of the Office of Sustainability. So back when I started at the university in 2014, we had a more modest goal to reduce university greenhouse gas emissions by 20% by 2025 on a per square foot basis. But since we had never quantified our emissions before, we really had no idea where we were with achieving that goal. So we created our first sustainability plan baseline report in 2016, and we started quantifying our greenhouse gas emissions and providing annual reporting. Once we saw the data, we realized we really needed an implementation plan in order to ensure that we would meet that greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal that we had at the time. So we released a greenhouse gas emissions reduction plan in 2018, and we started implementing projects related to energy efficiency within that plan. And then in 2020, President Zimmer announced a more ambitious goal to reduce absolute greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030. So that's currently our goal, and it's no longer based on square footage, it's just straight up absolute emissions. So in terms of data, the 2019 implementation of our energy management information system called EnergyCap has been critical in terms of housing the utility data we need to quantify and monitor university emissions and also monitor natural gas and electricity usage in our buildings. So these are the 9 program areas in our sustainability plan. And in the interest of time, I'll just touch on a few of these areas. The first area I'd like to talk about is Area 2, high performance buildings. We are focused on Area 2 because we know that natural gas and electricity from campus buildings contribute to approximately 70% of university greenhouse gas emissions in any given year. And so the energy efficiency projects that we started in 2018, we know that those have been impactful. We've actually been able to see a slight decrease in absolute greenhouse gas emissions on campus, while at the same time, campus square footage has actually increased pretty significantly. In fact, we recently achieved the 2021 Energy Star Partner of the Year Award, and that's awarded from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the U.S. Department of Energy. The program honors organizations that have made outstanding contributions to protect the environment through superior energy achievements. The award winners in this area are industries that adopt energy efficiency strategies. And these are essential to fighting climate change and protecting public health. So this is a huge accomplishment for us. To my knowledge, we're one of the only Ivy Plus institutions to have achieved this award. So that brings me to Area 1, climate change and energy. And I mentioned our goal earlier for greenhouse gas emissions reduction, and that sits within this Area 1. And as I said, it's directly related to Area 2, and therefore it's also a priority. And not only that, but it's an area of innovation for us, and I'll speak about that on the next slide. Before I get to that, though, I'd like to highlight Area 9, building awareness and partnerships. I have talked a lot about energy and greenhouse gas emission savings, and I'll talk about that more. But I wanted you to be aware that the Office of Sustainability actually works on projects related to broader sustainability in all of the 9 areas shown here, and we do that throughout the institution. So, for example, we developed a program called Environmental Frontiers in collaboration with the partners listed at the footer of this slide. And the intent of the program is to have meaningful engagement with students, faculty, and staff on campus with projects that are in alignment with our sustainability plan. So this initiative helps us to meet our goals in sustainability. It helps us to advance campus sustainability, and it allows us to collaborate with our partners. And then, very importantly, the student research that's conducted through this program helps us make timely, informed decisions. Dr. Sheikh will talk more about Environmental Frontiers in her presentation, and you'll get an idea of the range of projects that are involved with this. So I mentioned earlier about some advances that we've been able to make in technology regarding the, first of all, energy management information system. And so, for example, at the top of the screen here, we actually see a dashboard that we created in EnergyCap. And this has been able to help us to increase data transparency. So we do have public-facing dashboards on our website that show utility usage for our overall campus, and then also it gets more detailed, and you can look up by residence hall what the utility usage is, which is really interesting for students because they really like to look at that information. And we've even had competitions where they work on reducing energy in their residence halls, and they can actually see that through these dashboards. And so the other thing that we've been able to implement, instead of doing greenhouse gas emissions quantification by hand, which is a very time-consuming process and not very efficient, we developed a data warehouse. And this project actually automates the calculation of university greenhouse gas emissions and integrates with systems of record like EnergyCap and integrates with Tableau, our data visualization software, so that we can automatically see what our emissions look like on campus. And so instead of doing everything by hand, like I said, this saves us a lot of time, but it also provides quarterly informal reporting so that we can use that information from the reporting to make timely business decisions. And also it's less time intensive for staff, which I like. In conclusion, I'll briefly speak about future opportunities. Our main priority is to reduce university greenhouse gas emissions according to the goal that I mentioned. And we are working on a new implementation plan to do that for the new goal. And the emphasis is really on energy efficiency projects. That will also maybe be supplemented with renewable energy purchases, which is something that we're investigating currently. We're also working to enhance our programs with waste management so we can see less going to the landfill. We're working on potential voluntary travel programs that have to do with air travel. And we're continuing our work with Environmental Frontiers so we can increase that community engagement and continue to work along those lines. And with that, we also are working on increased data transparency because we would like to build on the technology that we've already put in place, the advancements that I mentioned recently. And so we'd like to continue to do that and make improvements so that we can continue to share this information. The next area is asset management, which we're currently researching ways that we can have a platform to share resources on campus. For example, laboratory equipment, furniture that's no longer being used. To avoid those things going to the landfill, we're working on having a platform where labs and different academic offices across campus can share resources. Let's say my office goes through a renovation and we don't need the furniture anymore. We can put that on the online platform for other departments to take, or, it can be donated, it can be sold, so that we're not putting those things in the landfill. Lastly, we are working to contribute to the advancement of sustainability within our peer institutions at the Ivy Plus Sustainability Consortium. So some of the work that we've been able to do with our technology that I mentioned, we are working to put those into white papers and do research sharing, and also with Environmental Frontiers so that we can share the knowledge and our findings and learnings with our peer institutions. This concludes the Office of Sustainability part of the discussion. Again, I just want to thank you for your time. And with that, I would like to now bring Professor Moyer to the conversation to discuss RDCEP.
Hi, my name is Liz Moyer. I'm a professor in the Department of Geophysical Sciences, and because I have broad interdisciplinary interests, I'm also involved in a lot of different projects, a research-based group called the Center for Robust Decision Making on Climate and Energy Policy, a graduate training group called Data Science and Energy and Environmental Research, and then because I'm interested in undergrads as well, I co-run the Environmental Frontiers Initiative with Sabina Sheikh, who you'll hear from in just a bit. So I'm going to share my screen and show you just a hint of sort of less about the formal research that we do and more about the education we've made for our students in how to think about sustainability. So let's make sure this works. So one of the challenges at the University of Chicago with thinking about sustainability, if you're a physical scientist, is that we don't have an engineering school. So we don't have people typically working on the kind of projects that would, help us get out of the situation that we're in. So what I try to do to bring to this university to sort of inform not only our research, but also our education, is to bring a physical scientist perspective in how we think about sustainability. So when we try to teach the undergraduates, especially, we want to teach them, how do you think about this tremendous and complicated social problem we're in? How do you work through it? So one of the core aspects we teach is falsifiability. But we don't just say things are changing. Do I understand? The only value I can add is if I can say, I know I hypothesize they're changing for a given reason. Can I distinguish between hypothesis A and hypothesis B? We also try to provide physical intuition, a sense of scale and proportion, and find that undergrads especially often have a comprehension of a larger problem, but very little physical intuition into the world, which prevents them from thinking about how to solve it. So they'll fixate on certain issues that are small, while neglecting other issues that are big. So Sabina will tell you about our Environmental Frontiers program that was really started to try to get the students to realize what the footprint of the university consists of. So the largest energy use of the university consists of laboratory ventilation. That's overwhelmingly the dominant proportion. Worrying about the lights in your dormitory is almost negligible. So Sabina will tell you about how we've been working to bring that level of intuition to our undergraduates. And then we think of the world as a stock and flow problem, where we're thinking of flows of resources in and out that are being used and modified. So just to give you a little bit of core intuition before I tell you about two research projects that both have visualizations that are available online that you can all look at, that are, I think, exciting and hopefully educational and valuable. Just to think about the kind of situation we're in, you know, when people say, we're approaching this new world of unsustainability, I just want everyone to realize the Earth is completely dominated by people at this point. So a third of the Earth's surface is used just to produce food for people. 90% of the mass, the biomass in mammals and birds is people and our livestock. So we own the Earth at this point. So when we think about, you know, moving forward, we have to realize we already are the dominant species on Earth in terms of usage of space. For perspective, I think a lot of you guys are alums of the University of Chicago. What I try to tell students when they think about these issues is to imagine your fraction of the world, the part that you own just yourself. And that is actually almost entirely exactly the area of the quad. So if you've been to the University of Chicago, you've walked around the quad, think of this concept of sustainability means producing everything I need renewably out of just this space. So look around next time you're in the university and look around and say, this is what I own, except of course, can't make use of ice and deserts and rainforests. We prefer to keep forests. We prefer generally to keep. So this is that section of the quad is the total amount of arable land that is being planted in crops, that's feeding you and your animals. And then we have the rest of that occupied by pasture land. So you can see that we've already filled the Earth. Again, a third of the Earth is used just to produce food for people. So as we move forward, if we want to make massive changes and get off fossil fuels, which as a climate scientist, I completely agree we should do, where do we go from there? So another core thing that I want to give everyone for perspective, because to me, this is the core number that you need to know in order to think about sustainability going forward, is the fraction, the multiplication factor that people have produced, that how much more energy are you currently using than you would use simply for food? As a mechanical engine, you have an input of fuel. You use 2,000 kilocalories per day, about, some of us more. And what is that? How does that correspond to your actual energy usage as somebody who flies on airplanes and drives in cars and heats your house and has lights and computers and goes to Zoom meetings? How much more energy are you using now? How many servants effectively do you have? So we like to think of this in units that we can understand. So we're just going to ask what your multiplication is. How many of you have you now produced? How many servants are now eating fossil fuels to do the same things that you would otherwise not want to do yourself, right? You don't want to scrub your own clothes. You don't want to walk everywhere. You'd prefer to take transportation. So how big is your footprint? And so if we do very simple math, and I'll make these slides available so anyone can do them, but we just convert your fuel input into something, a unit that we're more familiar with, which is watts. What we come up with, we just multiply by 4, we turn days into seconds, we come up with 100 watts. So that is effectively your power usage as a human being. You are a 100-watt light bulb. When we look at the actual energy use of the average American, it's obviously much larger. We do all kinds of creative and interesting things with energy that give us a lifestyle that we like, but that has unsustainable consequences. So how big is our actual usage? And what you'll find is that we are equivalent to 10,000 watts per person is our actual primary energy use, which is equivalent to about 100 servants. So when you think about going forward and changing the world to be more sustainable, what you should think about is, I personally, as an American, have 100 servants, more if you have a bigger house, and less if you have a smaller house, but about 100 servants. I feed them on fossil fuels. They're doing labor for me. They give me a lifestyle that I kind of like, because I certainly, seem to be enjoying the fruits of all this labor. What am I going to do to feed them on something different, given the fact that I don't have very much land? And people typically, they like to travel, they like to have lights. We can do a little bit of conservation for sure, but we are not going to go back to being hunter-gatherers. We can't actually go back to that, because we don't have enough land to feed everybody without technology. So how do we move forward? And part of what the RDCEP program has been doing is trying to bring people together who can do really creative labor to answer these problems. So I'm just going to, I don't know how much time I have here, not too much. So I'm going to blink through a few slides from these projects that we've been working on, and I totally welcome questions during the question session. And I also have got a website on each one. Each of these goes with a public visualization, and I really encourage you to go. So us.sankey.rdcep.org will give you the history of energy use in the United States from 1800. And it was a project developed along with the history department. So we're building bridges across departments here to ask, okay, if we now have 100 servants, how did we get there? What was the pathway we took? If we want to change in the future, we should look back to the past to understand, what gave us the energy system that we have today? What were the obstacles in building it? What are the obstacles going to be in the future for changing it? Just a few screenshots of it, but I encourage you to watch. It's an animation. It has clickable links. You can slide it. You can move it. You can expand on little buttons that will teach you different things about different years. If you look here, I've got 1800 on the top. I've got 1920 on the bottom. The way a Sankey diagram works is it's mapping a flow of energy. And so what you see is the primary energy sources on the left, the final uses on the right. The length doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just, convention. The thickness of every flow represents the amount of energy being used. So if you look at the United States in 1800, we're using only biomass, but we're using a tremendously large amount of biomass, like an absolutely outrageous amount of wood. So Americans were blessed with abundant forests, and we basically built really terrible houses. And so we had approximately 4 times the energy use of any comparable country at the time, just because we were just chopping our forests down like mad, burning them in really inefficient open fireplaces. And then when the forest ran out, as economics would tell us, we built better stoves, and we stopped doing that. So our energy use as a country, we've had a historically extremely high energy use from the start. 1920 is the bottom. You can see that in 1920, the age of coal is king. Almost every single sector that we're using is powered by coal. Coal has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. We had higher per capita coal use in 1920 than we do today. The peak per capita coal use, even though we've gotten richer and used more energy, the peak was in the 1910s. When you look at what we've done today, what have we done? We've built this whole electric sector that's now eating about a third of our fossil fuels. And we are gradually squeezing coal away and replacing it by natural gas. The only place we use coal anymore, we don't heat our homes with it. We don't power our locomotives with it. We use it only for electricity, and even there it's going away. So we are in the middle already of a massive energy transition that is comparable to the energy transitions you've seen in history. You don't notice it right now because your electricity is still showing up. Price hasn't changed very much, but the coal to gas transition is as historically large, we can see, as any you've experienced before. And so one thing that looking at history does is gives us some confidence. If we've seen these massive transitions where we've rebuilt our entire energy system and we realize we're in a transition now, it hasn't destroyed us, it hasn't ruined the economy, it hasn't broken us, it hasn't changed our lifestyle, it is possible to make these transitions in the future without major disruption. So that's one thing we do learn. Okay, now we can't do it without cost. So again, I'm going to blink these slides very quickly, but I encourage you to go to these websites. So the other one, us.infrastructure.rdcep.org, was a project we developed to ask if we want to change, how do we make that change? What does it require? If we've built up our energy system for several hundred years, what does it take to change that energy system going forward? And so we wanted to make an inventory of every piece of long-lived infrastructure that we had in the United States now that drove our system, ask what it costs, and then ask, if we changed all that, how fast can it change? What is our reasonable barriers to making a change? The university wants to change greenhouse gas emissions by 50%, which is an amazing goal. Like, it's unreachable by just changing our system, right? We're going to have to buy offsets. They have incredibly rapid goals for the University of Chicago right now. Most of everything, when you have long-lived infrastructure, the changes are 25 or 50 years long. So let's just take a peek at this. Again, I can't explain all of it, but I'm happy to take questions. So when we added up our total assets, we have over $10 trillion in assets that are devoted to producing energy that have a lifetime of longer than 25 years. And of those assets, over $6 trillion are exclusive to fossil fuels. So if you want to get off fossil fuels, you have $6 trillion of stuff that you're going to have to throw away or, gradually retire it. So that's what drives the constraints for making large scale changes. So we have about 65% of US GDP is the replacement value of our energy infrastructure right now. It's about $30,000 per person of pipes and wells and pipelines and all the generators and power plants, all the machinery that brings power to you right now. Is equivalent to about $30K per person. The annual investment is about $400 billion, implies a turnover time in 25 years, and that really is about the turnover time of this kind of infrastructure. So when we think about moving forward, given the fact that we haven't done anything about climate change really in a long time, we haven't developed a major policy, we don't have an energy policy. What we are asking is, can we even achieve a transition in that 25-year turnover, or are we going to go faster? If we go faster, what are the costs and the trade-offs? And that's really a major part of what RDCEP is about, is assessing that trade-off. So before I close, I just encourage you to look at our visualizations. If you go to the infrastructure visualization, what you'll see is a map. And we are improving it, so it will improve in the next year because we have a new front end that's coming in soon where you'll be able to identify every single individual piece of infrastructure. But right now you can just look at them and you can also see the costs that are associated with each one. So all of our pipelines, all of our wells, all of our coal mines, all of our railroads that bring the coal around. And by the way, the shutting of coal mines, a third of coal mines in the United States have closed just in the last 10 years. So that's, for context, the scale of the energy transition we're in right now. All of our generators, our power plants, fossil and non-fossil, all of our electricity lines, which are the major obstacle to going renewable, is just our infrastructure for moving electricity around. And when you look at all those costs, I'll just leave right here that we see in the basic back of the envelope numbers, it's certainly possible to move the energy system forward, to change it. It doesn't take a huge amount. $40 per ton CO2 is a quite reasonable amount that would produce substantial changes in the energy system. But we depend on a very large infrastructure, this enormous web of equipment that we have produced over 200 years. Many of things that pipelines from 50 years ago are still operational. Changing that's not going to be fast. And so that's the perspective I try to give my students. What we're trying to do is help the public visualize that and then help think what we have to do to move forward on this problem that's not technically difficult, but it's slow because of the scale of the issue. And when you think about the university moving forward on its greenhouse gas goals, and Sabina will tell you about the program, what we're teaching students about that, the thing to emphasize is changing anything by 50% in a very short time window. That's really hard. The university's greenhouse gas goals are, I would say, almost too fast. It's astounding what we're committed to now. So, just please be aware of the context of this, that, reducing energy use or changing how you get your energy is just an enormously slow, it's an important problem for society, but it's big and it's slow. And the more realistic we are about it, which is my personal perspective, then the better we can achieve a realistic solution. And with that, I would like to turn you over to Sabina, who's going to tell you more specifically about how we're working on training undergraduates to make real-world decisions and to get experience making these difficult trade-offs.
Hi, everybody. Thank you to my friends and colleagues, Liz and Sarah, for those very informative talks. I realize I need to take one of Liz's courses every time I hear her talk. So my name is Sabina Sheck, and I'm going to assume you can all see my screen. And it's nice to, I guess I can't see you all, but to have you all here with us today. Thank you for attending, and thank you to the organizers. So I am the director of something called the Program on Global Environment, which is an undergraduate program in environmental and urban studies. My research is on environment and migration in Southeast Asia, actually in Cambodia. So I'm not going to talk about that today, but I'm happy to talk about it any other time. But I'm here today to talk to you about sustainability, students, and engagement, which you've already heard quite a bit about from both of my colleagues, Sarah and Liz. So I wanted to talk about this from the perspective of a couple different pieces. First, pedagogy and curriculum, and then undergraduate research, which you've already heard the Environmental Frontiers Initiative mentioned a few times, and then let you know about a couple programs and events that are coming up that I'd like to invite you to and hope that you can attend. So first off, if I can talk about our program is the environmental education. So what we aspire to do here is to cultivate intellectual, civic-minded environmental leaders to address the planet's most pressing issues. So climate change is not something that's way off into the distant future. It's happening now, and we have environmental leaders. Our environmental leaders are also not way off into the future. We have them here right now at the University of Chicago. So we hope to really cultivate this through the different initiatives that I'm going to talk about. My program in particular that I work for and that I run is called the Program on Global Environment. Another program that I run is called the Chicago Studies Program, and we work very closely to provide students with these diverse pathways from foundational and methodological courses to experiential ones where they can participate in engaged research opportunities and really develop sort of community-based understandings of the relationships between environmental outcomes and social conditions. So I'll tell you a little bit about our program, since that's the one that I am positioned to speak on. We offer a BA, undergraduate BA degree in environmental and urban studies. The program has been around for some time. I've been with the program for the last 5 years. I think it's been around for close to 20. Our program offers courses that sort of generally explore processes, both formal and informal, of relationships that humans have to built and natural environments in cities across the globe. We offer courses that range from foundational to methodological to topic-based and experiential. We are very focused on the social sciences. We're in the social sciences collegiate division, and we're increasingly seeing a lot of students and course offerings in the environmental humanities as well. So I should mention that in Liz's department, there is also a BS degree in environmental science that's intended for students whose interests fall at the intersection of biology, chemistry, earth sciences. So the two programs are complementary in that sense. Just to give you an idea of some of the courses that we're offering, this is a sampling from our spring course schedule, which we just finalized today. So you can see we offer quite a range of courses, from methodological courses, visualizing environmental data at the planetary scale, historical courses, Chicago's agricultural hinterlands, so looking at the history of land use in Chicago and sort of the surrounding areas. A water course that I've been teaching for the last couple of years. I haven't yet taught it in person, but I will be this spring, focused on the connections between economics, policy, and society. And water use. We have design studios, including the Historic Preservation Studio. We have an Urban Design with Nature course. We have courses that get students into the sort of the design fields of thinking about what sustainable cities might look like and how they're built. Cities on Screen, one of the environmental humanities courses that explores cities historically through media. And environmental politics. We also offer courses in environmental law, environmental policy, health and environment, and urban science, urban social science. So we've got quite a range of courses that come from both the environmental and the urban perspectives. Another program I would love to tell you all about is our sort of signature experience. It's part of the Chicago Studies Quarter, which is designed to be like a study abroad at home. So especially for our students who are not from Chicago, which is a good proportion of our students, they come here to study, they work extremely hard, and then they leave. And so our goal is to get our students really immersed into Chicago, which has an incredible environmental history and urban history. So it's an ideal place really to get out of the classroom and sort of apply some of the concepts that have been taught in different sort of core curriculum. So we are launching this, we've been launched this in 2012, and we're running it this spring, the Calumet Quarter. So it is our signature experience, and it is really focused on the historical, ecological, and social exploration of a region that is really critical to the existence of Chicago, from the waterways to the prairie and the savanna and dune habitats. But today is and historically has been quite fraught with issues related to environmental contamination, environmental justice, and environmental inequities. So you can see, or maybe you can't see because it's kind of small, the three courses in this quarter are environmental justice, urban ecology, and urban planning for land and life. And the students spend their Fridays in the field visiting sites of ecological and historical significance. So that's just an example of one of our experiential learning programs. The other thing I wanted to mention is the Mansueto Institute for Urban Innovation, one of our close partners into the group of people you're hearing from today. They've started a graduate certificate in urban sciences sustainable development. So currently there is really no comprehensive graduate program focused on environment. So Mansueto has created a pathway for students across the university, graduate students across the university, who are interested in questions about cities, including climate change, pandemic, social equities, and sustainable urban development. So students will have a place to come together, as a convening of sorts, to be able to tackle these issues from across disciplines and across different parts of the university. I want to talk a little bit about undergraduate research, and what you've heard from both of my colleagues about is the Environmental Frontiers Initiative. So all of the units represented here on the bottom of the slide, Sarah's office, Liz's department, our program, and the Mansueto Institute for Urban Innovation, we run something called Environmental Frontiers Campus. And this is really a program that was set up to engage the university community in campus sustainability through data analysis, research, and programs for behavioral change. So we know that students have long been advocates and activists for campus sustainability. We also know that faculty are conducting cutting-edge environmental research, as you just saw from Professor Moyer. So this platform, led by those of us here today and others at the Mansueto Institute, really tries to bring together students, faculty, and facility staff for a comprehensive effort to meet the university's sustainability goals that Sarah talked about. So it's a way to get students to engage in real actionable research, and also to engage with one of their passions, which is campus sustainability. So our students have been working on several projects by applying computational and social science methods to this real world problem. I'll tell you a little bit about the projects. So we've launched this about, I guess it would be 2 years ago. And the projects that we have completed so far, and some are still ongoing, of course, because these things will never end, because sustainability is always important. But As Liz mentioned, that the laboratories on campus use a tremendous amount of energy. They take about 10% of our campus building area, but 38% of building energy use. And what the students have found through their research and what facility staff has identified is that the majority of these labs are underperforming when it comes to energy use intensity. So the students have worked with facility staff and under Liz's guidance to develop a decision-making tool to build more incorporate energy efficiency into lab design and equipment purchases, and also a set of behavioral campaigns to reduce excess energy use. Another project, the LEED building model assessment, as Sarah showed you, there's 19 LEED certified buildings on campus. Using data from about 12 of those, students were able to identify the energy performance of LEED certified buildings relative to non-LEED certified buildings, and found that they were not necessarily outperforming the non-LEED buildings. So they made a set of recommendations to seek out other types of goals and metrics which might be more relevant than LEED, to make regular improvements and upgrades and retrofits to buildings through operations. Two other projects I want to mention relatively quickly because I think my time is filling up. The water conservation program, which was the program that I had mentored, came out of actually some of the work that we had done in my water course that I teach through data on campus water use that Sarah had and her team had provided to us. So to reach the university's water reduction goal of 15% by 2025, the students benchmarked water use and made recommendations for water conservation through technological improvements and behavior change as well. Lastly, I will say the tree ecosystem service analysis project, which was conducted under the guidance of my colleague in my program, Allison Anastasio, looked at the university's campus forest, botanical garden, quantified the ecosystem services of the trees. So that includes things like the carbon sequestration and storage benefits, the urban heat island mitigation, air quality control, and made recommendations for the succession planting and the different types of tree species that would sort of optimize ecosystem services and perform best under projections of climate change. Lastly, I want to just invite you all to a couple of programs that are coming up, and hopefully you can attend. One that our program is running with Chicago Studies, called Climate in the City. And this is a series of 5 speakers, not from the university, but local thinkers, activists, policymakers. We've got 5 events coming up in the next few weeks. The first one is tomorrow, focused on social equity and environment. So we've got communicating inclusive solutions, transit-oriented development, restorative justice and indigenous urban environmental restoration, resilience for all species, which will talk about monarch migration through Chicago, and visualizing environmental change, so more methodological one. Lastly, I wanted to mention what we've been investing a lot of time in over the last year and just launched this week is our proposed committee. Oh, no. Can you still see my screen? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I think you can see it now, hopefully. This is our proposed committee on environment, geography, and urbanization, or CEGU. We envision this to be a robust platform for critical thinking, advanced research, and innovative pedagogy on societal and territorial dimensions of climate change. There's a lot to say about this, which I'm going to hold off on, but you can visit our new draft website, and our first 2 events are coming up starting next week. So Climate, the Legacy and the Legacies of Empire, and Energy Histories and Geography. So this is a proposal that we are submitting to the Social Sciences Division to create a new degree granting committee with undergraduate and graduate programs. So with that, thank you for your patience with my slideshow. I'll just point you to some websites that I mentioned in the talk, and I think we will bring back my colleagues for the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Sabina and Liz, for those wonderful presentations. Very interesting. I'd like to go to some of those events you mentioned, Climate in the City, Sabina.
You're most
So I'm
welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to start in with a conversation portion for this evening, and I'm going to be basing that on some of the questions that we've been receiving. The first question I'd like to go into relates to the university greenhouse gas emissions inventory. There's two questions. I'm going to kind of combine them into one and answer them all at once. One is asking what's included in the University of Chicago greenhouse gas emissions inventory, whether it's just the Hyde Park campus or if other buildings are included, like the Bleacher Center downtown. The other one has to do with how transportation plays into the inventory. So to answer the question about what's included in the inventory, we follow a protocol called the World Resources Institute Greenhouse Gas Protocol. And that protocol guides us and instructs us on what buildings need to be included. And by the way, that is a great question. And so we follow what's known as the operational control approach, which means that we include buildings in our inventory that we as facility services have operational control over. So because we do not have operational control over the Bleacher Center, it is not included. We also do not have operational control over the medical campus. So those buildings are not included. So what we're specifically talking about that is included is the Hyde Park campus, the non-medical side. And I'm going to put a link into our reporting because if you're interested, you can actually read in quite a bit of detail exactly what's included. So we list the properties by property code and we indicate if they're in or out of the inventory and we explain why, like if they're demolished or there's a new construction that comes online that gets added to the inventory. So I've just put a link in the reporting for you to read more about that. Regarding the transportation question, that's a really interesting question as well, because there are different parts of transportation that go into the inventory. The first one is university-owned fleet. So any emissions that come out of the fleet that we own as a campus, that is actually 1% of all university greenhouse gas emissions. And so we do quantify that, we report on it. I think more what this person was interested in is commuting. Before I get to that, I'll quickly mention that we also quantify and report on emissions related to ground transport and air transport for university business. Regarding commuting, one of the things that we follow in the protocol that's required is that data that we use to quantify emissions must be verifiable and reliable. So we do not have verifiable and reliable commuting data at this time, so it is currently not in the inventory. We are working towards being able to do that in the future. In the meantime, the Department of Safety and Security, and through them, Transportation and Parking, they have a number of programs to encourage the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from commuting, such as the UGO shuttles that go around campus. There's divvy bike stations throughout campus. There's an occasional parking program so that people can choose, oh, I only want to drive to campus, once a week, and the other days I want to take public transportation. And on top of that, campus has many hubs, the Metra and CTA, many options for public transit are right connecting directly to campus. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. Yeah, I'm actually just going to skip and answer this one question really quickly because it's related to what I was saying. What kind of equipment is being used to measure emissions? I really appreciate this question because it's something that often gets confused. We don't measure emissions. So we don't go out and put like a thermometer type of device and put it up in the air and, figure out what the emissions are. We actually calculate emissions using standardized calculations from the World Resources Institute in the protocol. So it's something that you actually calculate based on usage of things like electricity and natural gas. I'm going to move on so that we can hear from our other speakers as well. Liz, I would like to ask you, I have this question coming in here about if you could say more about nuclear, if that's something that you would want to comment on.
Sure. Nuclear power is actually really interesting. If you look at the Sankey diagram, the animation, you can see the burst of enthusiasm. Nuclear grows extremely fast. The beginning of the use of nuclear looks like the beginning of an energy transition, and then it never happens. And the reason it doesn't happen is because 3 Mile Island hit and all of the construction of nuclear stopped at that point. Could we ever go back and, you know, make nuclear an important part of the energy supply or the energy system of the United States? Technically, we could do that. In practice, it has been more expensive than foreseen. The costs are not coming down. If anything, they're going up because people are concerned about safety and there's regulations. I took my energy class for a considerable amount of time. Every year, we would go out to visit a nuclear plant, which we had an opportunity to do that through Exelon. So the staffing of a nuclear plant is actually fairly high because of the incredible concern that they have to have about safety. And not only that, in the modern era, they also have a defense staff, you know, with automatic weapons that are stationed around a nuclear plant. So nuclear is just something that cannot go quickly. You cannot make a fast change. You know, everything, like I said, the energy system is already slow to evolve. And everything with nuclear is even slower. It's a high capital investment in a nuclear plant. Like you spend a lot of money and then you make cheap electricity after that. So all your spending is upfront. It takes a long time to build the thing. You're committed to it for 30 or 50 years after you've built it. So it's not particularly nimble. So I guess my answer to that is I don't see nuclear as playing a large part in what we are going to do going forward, where we are going to try to make changes that are fairly rapid. If we had thought more diligently about this in the last 30 years, worried about these issues, we could possibly have come to a situation where nuclear could play an important role. But right now, it's just too late. Unless someone comes up with some magical benchtop system, so you just have to pray. But the way we have it right now does not look like it's going to play a major role in any sort of rapid transition.
Interesting. Thank you, Liz. The next question is for Sabina. And the question is, how is the University of Chicago thinking about its relationship to the waterways of the metropolitan area, such as Lake Michigan and the Chicago River?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, there's a lot of different ways to answer this. And I think certainly the one thing related to the EFCampus Water Project that is very important is that the students built a financial model to look at the sort of costs and benefits of different water investments. And because water is priced so cheaply in Chicago, that the return on investment doesn't look like it does with energy investment, right? But there's significant social cost of using water. It's not priced based on the full cost of water. And there's a lot of reasons for the University of Chicago to be stewards of the Great Lakes environment because of its location, because of how it was built, because we have now an Institute for Molecular Engineering. One thing that we have done is when I first took over this program, I realized that there were no water-focused courses being taught in the social sciences. And so I thought seemed like a problem to me. So we developed a new water course sequence. I mentioned my course, which the first course is taught by Professor Seth Darling from Argonne and molecular engineering, and he talks about the science and technology of water. And then my course talks a little bit more about society and policy. And through that, we use campus water data that Sarah's provided to us, and we get students involved. Our students currently are very interested as well in sort of Chicago's local water system. So we try to go out to the Jardine water filtration plant, to the water reclamation district facilities when we can. We haven't been able to go in a couple of years. We've got boat trips planned as part of the Chicago's agricultural hinterlands course. And so there's a lot of different ways, both through research, through our location, and through teaching. And so one thing that we started a few years ago, which hasn't been too active during the pandemic, is something called the Watershed Initiative. And this was a convening of people interested in water across the university. So people from Liz's Department of Geophysical Sciences to people at the Oriental Institute to those of us in the social sciences at the law school, in this, biological sciences, and really thinking about how can we as a university have more of a presence in water research. There's all these people here doing work on water, but we just don't come together for, in any regular sort of convening. So that's something that we're very much working on.
Thank you so much, Sabina.
Can I add one small thing? I just
Yes,
want to say
please.
in our department, we have one faculty member whose research is entirely focused on sort of microbial activity and ecology in the Great Lakes. And that has been great for us to have a connection. You know, we didn't have that 10 years ago. And now we have someone where Lake Michigan is her primary research area and brings students out on cruises to collect samples in Lake Michigan. And so I think we are gradually developing more of a focus. It's very natural for us to be focused on the waters around the university. We haven't had that in the past, but that interest is really growing. So,
and if I can, sorry, just add one more thing, Sarah. I just met with a PhD student today in sociology who's working with a team of undergraduate students in cinema and media studies to do a documentary film about Great Lakes salmon fishers. So the range of water, Great Lakes research is quite broad and really interesting here.
Oh, great. Thank you. I'm going to ask a question that's directed at Liz, but Sabina, feel free to chime in. It says, Dr. Moyer indicated that there is no national energy policy. How can the university's goals and efforts be rolled out to the state and city levels?
So I think universities are often an exemplar, like we're considered to be thought leaders. People look at what universities do and follow it. So beyond our immediate role of producing, educated students and research on the actual impacts, I do think that what the university does plays a very important role in how people think about changes, in how people think about conveying information. And so one of the things I've been excited about working with facilities in the last 5 years and with this Environmental Frontiers program is that we really want to set an example for transparency of use of data, for talking about, very openly about what we're doing. I mean, this is a hard thing for, any organization to get behind, like aggressive transparency, but I think we're getting there. And just to set a standard for talking about the real trade-offs and choices that have to be made. And the more we can do that as a large public institution, the more we can set an example for everyone else. So that I think is our primary, there's nothing anybody can do, at the organizational level that's like deeply innovative. We can have cogen if that works out. That's a good thing to have, but other universities have that too. So I really think the best example that we can provide, and the city of Chicago is actually fairly innovative in its use of data. And so we have partnered with them on many initiatives, is how to present information about the decisions that we're making and about the actions that we're taking. And I think that has been historically something that organizations have been very bad about doing. Even universities have not been very good about it. They typically have very opaque energy dashboards that don't provide you with much intuition or context for the numbers they present. And we've really been working on doing something which is sort of clear and transparent and provides all the information to let people really understand decisions. And I think that's a great contribution.
Great. And to that, did you have anything you'd like to add, Sabina?
10 seconds. I just wanted to say that that's really one of the goals of the Environmental Frontiers Initiative, is that EFCampus is the campus, research component of it, but the goal is to expand it out into neighborhoods on the south side, into the city of Chicago and cities globally. So that's sort of our next phase of Environmental Frontiers and trying to get there.
Well, thank you. And I also think that because the work that you're doing, Sabina, and the work that you're doing, Liz, to educate students in the college is very important in regards to this question as well, because then those students will be pushing these things forward in the future. So with that, it is time for Keelan to join us again for closing remarks. Thank you, everybody, for participating. This was a lovely conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, especially for sharing all the university's sustainability initiatives and the innovative ways you are working to build a more sustainable future on campus and beyond. And thank you to Professors Moyer and Scheck for highlighting your work and research and sharing your vast knowledge and expertise. I know we could host a whole other program just to address all the great questions that were coming in tonight. If you would like to learn more about the programs you heard about tonight or how to support them, please contact me directly at leadersinphilanthropy@uchicago.edu. And I'd like to thank all of you for attending tonight's Leaders in Philanthropy program. My continued gratitude for all of your support to the University of Chicago.